Good morning. My name is Bill Reeks, and as many of you may know, I lead a company called the Gramercy Institute, and we are a think tank for senior marketers from major financial firms. We also have plenty of content that features agencies and partners, all for the betterment of financial services marketing. We have a very unique panel today. It is made up of leaders from various different disciplines in financial services marketing. They're all agency executives. And the name of our series is Agency Brilliance, and this is no exception to the handle that we've given it. We have a specific topic that we're talking about today, and that topic is best practices in financial services marketing. That's a pretty broad topic, and myself and the panel have figured out a good way to tackle it, and I'll be asking each one to chime in on this. But maybe the best way for me to begin this discussion is by starting with some introductions. I've already gone myself, but I'll move over to Doug Gallo from 50,000 Feet. And Doug, I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about 50,000 Feet and about yourself and what you do there.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Doug Gallo. I'm a managing director at 50,000 Feet. I'm calling in from our office here in Chicago. We are a global brand consultancy and creative agency. We help our clients drive growth and efficiency through integrated brand experiences. We have offices in Chicago. This is our headquarters, New York, and actually a new presence in London. So we can serve clients across geographies and internationally. We have a good depth and breadth of experience and expertise solving complex brand and marketing challenges for some of the largest financial services companies and brands. We serve often as a lead creative agency or a close partner to firms across investment management, asset management, hedge funds, investment and retail banking, certain exchanges, and payments technology. So it's really part of our core expertise serving financial services companies, and both from a brand consulting and creative perspective.
Well, Doug, we're delighted to have you with us, and I look forward to some of your comments as we move forward in this panel discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's go to you, Richard Heft, if you would. I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about EXT marketing, what you do there, etc.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me on today, and really glad to be here. I'm just a little worried that the camera angle is making my hair look like it's thinned out a bit on top, but it's that's not the case at all. Extension marketing, or EXT marketing, has been around for about 15 years. I founded it with others from the financial services sector, so all mostly client-side individuals with some creatives from some of the larger agencies, especially in our studio, but certainly from a content standpoint, CFA level writers who hail from the industry. Our clients include most of the largest asset managers, hedge funds, private equity firms, venture capital, dealerships. So all across the broad spectrum of financial services providers and firms that offer all different types of products. And we are full service. So we start with strategy, branding, execution, thought leadership, web, digital. We do full media activation. So it runs the spectrum. We do everything, and we have offices in New York and Toronto, Canada, where I'm currently located. I was joking that it hasn't started snowing yet, but it is. We've approached late August, so it could be snowing here any minute. And again, thank you.
Richard, thank you, sir. Listen, let me ask you now, the derivation of EXT, or extension marketing, there's some significance to that, and would you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the company, our goal was to be an extension of our clients' team. So we weren't, to coin a term, looking to boil the ocean and take everything, because a lot of our clients have marketing infrastructure in-house. They do a lot of the strategy work. They may have writers, but need some design work, designers, but may need some copy. So we originally called ourselves Extension Marketing, and the brand was, there were still actually phones where you dialed extensions, not like the cell phones were very, very in their very early stages. So our original logo was like dial tones, dial EXT, which it seems ridiculous now. We've gone through multiple rebrands and we're going through one right now. So we shortened it to EXT, and everybody just calls us EXT now. So there's plenty of confusion there, which is always good for any branding exercise. But again, we've been successful at it, and yes, we do see ourselves as extensions of our clients' teams. Whatever they need from us, we're ready to step in.
I'm glad I asked you to mention that, because that actually does speak to the longevity of your organization.
Yes.
If there with
and it's wild because I'm only 29 years old. It's right.
Yeah, you are looking good, man. Listen, Richard, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to your comments moving forward. Mushter, I shall move on to you, sir, if I may, and please introduce yourself. Tell us about TrueVoice and what you do there.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us here join this panel. I am Mr. Moin. I'm the head of innovation at TrueVoice Growth. TrueVoice Growth Marketing is a full-service digital marketing agency. We have a focus. Our clients tend to be in complex, highly regulated industries, where we really focus in specializing, helping them engineer and implement comprehensive full funnel growth marketing solutions designed to really drive transformative growth. In terms of our secret sauce, if you will, is some of the perspective that we bring to our client in helping them solve the problem. We have a proprietary framework that we apply, and we apply that both in terms of the practice that we have from a consulting and expertise perspective, and also a combination of technology that enables that forward as well. So that's sort of the end-to-end full market, demand, acquisition, retention, everything that goes underneath that are services that we provide to our clients.
Mushter, thank you so much. How would you describe your role at TrueVoice Growth Marketing?
So I've been with TrueVoice for over 5 years now, and I come from a background where I have had, financial services background, but also a small technology background. And we are a boutique agency, if you will, and requires a level of entrepreneurial thinking in solving our customers' solutions, while we primarily help large, complex, enterprise customers like Fortune 50 companies. But given the fact that we are primarily the digital space, it requires you the nimbleness to think about how do you solve problems by both bringing your core domain expertise, but applying technology to it. So in terms of what I do is really help our customers sort of, see the forest, not just the trees, if you will, in terms of execution from a strategy perspective, driving that piece and connecting to the execution side, which is the bulk of what we do help on the agency services part of our business, if you will. So my primary focus is really helping drive the strategy along to help our clients execute on their growth agenda.
Well, you seem like the right guy for this call then, and I do thank you very much for joining us. Let's move on to you, Gordon Kerr, if I may. Tell us a little bit more about Fundamental Media, about yourself and what you do there.
Great, thanks, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I run the US business for Fundamental Media. We're a global media agency and technology company. We've been around for over 20 years. So as custodians of our clients' budgets, then our job is to make sure that we are future-proofing their brand, reaching the correct audience. We invest heavily in research, both from the institutional audiences, the wholesale audiences, self-directed investor audience. Kind of our DNA is using empirical-based evidence to plan and strategize around media. We reorged the business 2023 into Fundamental Group. So that's really the extension of our capabilities built on the needs of our clients. So we employ ex-CMOs from asset managers. We have a whole tech team. We have 16 engineers. We have NVIDIA chips. We've built a full end-to-end asset management tech stack. That is to support the whole, I'm going to mention cookies, the end of cookies and the requirement to ensure that we have data efficacy throughout the organization. We have a labs business where we invest in innovation, but really our DNA is around being specialists in investment management, from investment banking and institutional investment to wholesale to self-directed investors, all the way through to wealth management. So happy to be here, and great, looking forward to the discussion.
That's terrific, Gordon. And where are you at this very moment in time?
Yeah, so I'm based in California. I spend half my time between New York and Boston. So I'm on the road 50% of the time. And yeah, so today I'm in LA, but I guess I could be anywhere.
I guess you could. Gordon, thank you so much. Doug Hesney from Cognito, tell us more about yourself. Tell us about Cognito, if you would.
Thank you, Bill. So great to be here today. I am the head of U.S. financial services at Cognito. We are a global PR and digital marketing agency specializing in financial services, asset management, professional services, payment technology, banking. Really the world of B2B services. Is really our bread and butter. We are a global agency, truly a global agency. We have offices in New York, London, Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, Dusseldorf. I'm going to forget one. We're all over. And we really do operate as a true global team. Our model is different than, say, like an Edelman or a WPP, where you really have very siloed different agencies that exist in different markets. We meet, all the heads of the different regions meet on a Monday, meet every Monday, and we work collectively on accounts and growth together. I've been working in the industry for the better part of 20 years. I'm an attorney by training. I know. I was watching Obama's speech last night, and I was like, wow, it's really been a long time. So you've seen a lot of changes in the industry, seen a lot of changes in the last few years, and really excited to talk about that today.
Well, terrific, Doug, and thank you so much for joining us. I'll point out to our audience that we have then someone from Chicago, someone from Toronto, someone from Connecticut is where you're calling from, California, and New York. So anyway, it's terrific to have you all with us today and with the audience. Let's get on with it. All right. Now, as I mentioned as the panel already knows, but as the audience probably knows, we're talking about best practices in financial services marketing today. And, that's a big topic, right? I mean, and how do you get your head around a discussion about what are the best practices within 60 minutes? So what I asked each panelist to do is to answer this one question for me, and we'll go around. And we'll see what each panelist has to add to this. We have not yet shared this with one another, so there may be a duplication of something. But at the same time, that says something in and of itself, and I'm going to ask later each one to expand on it. So the question is this: what is it that you are particularly passionate about in financial services marketing that you wish the entire industry were as equally as passionate about as you are? And Doug Gallo, I'll start with you if you don't mind. And I'm asking for sort of like a bullet point, if you would. We'll come back and expand on that. Okay?
Sounds good. No, thanks for starting with me, Bill. That means I get to have the most original idea. But even though it's not, because my passion is really kind of a traditional one in my history and brand consulting, is that my passion really lies in brand building that can create enduring brands that can navigate the endless waves of change that affect financial services marketing.
Terrific. It's just the kind of slug that I was looking for, and so I'm putting down brand building for you, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Richard, I'll scoot on to you now, and I'm looking for a few words from you in terms of what it is that you're particularly passionate about in financial marketing that you wish the entire industry was equally as passionate about.
Yeah, I've given this a lot of thought since I got your large list of questions, Bill. Concerning this call. For me, the first thing that came to mind that I'm gonna speak to as much as possible today is gaining a very, very deep understanding of my clients' products and or services. I think that this is something that I always want to focus on, and that I think the entire industry, from a marketing standpoint, should focus on. And it's become sort of one of our key differentiators, is having that deep level of knowledge and leveraging that for whatever brand building efforts, for whatever storytelling efforts we're going to try to accomplish when engaged with a client. So that's it.
It's terrific, and I appreciate too the brevity that both of you have shared, because it's difficult to sort of stop it right there. But
It is.
I know. But once we get through it, we'll really, I'm going to ask you each one to expand on it. But if I may say, this is a fun exercise, though, right? I mean, like I know you're all trained to say a bunch of things, right? That about, you know, what we do and what we do well, et cetera. But it's kind of hard just to stick one tack in one idea. And Richard, thank you for sharing that one with us.
Thank you.
Doug Hesney, what's your thought on this? What is it that you or your team is particularly passionate about that you wish the entire financial services industry were as well?
Well, I think that, you know, it's an interesting question. I would say that where we really focus a lot, and I think that people are passionate about this across the board. I think I'll go into it a little bit, but it's really in finding and influencing the audiences that matter to our clients. And I would say that that is something that I think people pay a lot of lip service to. I think it's something that people talk about a lot on kind of a broad basis, or kind of a general basis. But I think given the rapid amount of changes in media consumption, in the media business, in the economics of the advertising industry, of the entire media industry, I think that the quest for audience and the quest for audience attention sometimes gets lost in old preconceived notions. And I would say that that's the thing that my team and I are most passionate about, is how we can kind of see around those corners and find where the audiences are going, as opposed to where they used to be. And I would say that's sort of our main passion.
Doug, that's awesome, and thank you very much. And I definitely can see how that can be a passion for you and for your team. Influencing the right audiences is what I jotted down. But we're going to go back and visit that and let you expand on that in a few minutes. Gordon, how might you respond to this a question about passion in financial marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to disagree with anything that's been said. I think they're all super important. But I'll bring it up since no one else has yet. I think the convergence of AI and talent is the thing that trying to find a smart equilibrium there is something I care deeply about. Before AI was cool, I worked for an AI agency focused on NLP and machine learning. So like seeing that come to fruition now for our clients, I think is super important, and training people effectively to understand the opportunity.
What a great addition to this list. Thank you, and I look forward to discussing this in a deeper way as well. Muster, now you get cleanup batter here, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that, but how might you respond to this question about what you and your team are passionate about that you wish the entire industry were as passionate about?
So I'll anchor my response at both a personal level and then where the company is. I'm a product and a technologist as a background, so my passion really lies at the nexus of applying technology to truly gnarly sort of problems. So in that context, what we're really focused on, and this may overlap a little bit with what Gordon was talking about, we have been a technology-driven company for the longest time, specifically applying AI to it. And now with the new crop of technology, we have invested money in building our own sort of proprietary Gen AI tools, but really focused on a particular problem for our client. And this is the other part that really connects the dot for us really well. What we see as we work with large enterprise clients and marketing organization, the biggest disconnect is between strategy and execution. So we are going about through applying essentially our framework through the technology that we are building to help our clients and customers really connect those dots much better. And we'll talk a little bit more about that hopefully as we go on today. But that's and this is literally happening in real time. The work that I'm doing is really having on the ground impact. And that's what I'm most passionate about, not just sort of being at a 50,000-foot level, but things that can be driven and informed by real world sort of feedback loop.
Mushter, thank you for that. Now, if I'm, and for this moment, I'm looking for slugs here. Like, if I were to put building a bridge between strategy and execution, would that embody your sentiment in a brief way?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to get a handle on that. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, all for those really smart responses. And while each one overlaps a little bit, each one is distinct, and I appreciate that. Now, I'll give Doug Gallo a break here of always calling on him first, and I'll let me move over to you, Richard, if I may. And let's see, Richard, you highlighted the notion of understanding understanding the services that your particular clients offer. And obviously, this is so important in financial services marketing. But I'm going to ask you to expand on that a little bit, and I'm going to have maybe some follow-up questions. And you feel free to give any examples that come to mind, and whether these examples originated from EXT marketing or anywhere else. But let's dig down into this about the importance of understanding the specific services that your clients offer.
Yeah, and I just want to first point out that I'm sweating that I'm going to be the first person to start speaking while still on mute. So the fact that I have not done so yet is a bit of a small accomplishment for me already out of the gates. So for me, we established this company. I came from a communications world and wanted to offer the best possible communications for the industry. And that required a really deep level of knowledge. Like, when you're marketing a new product, a new, let's say, mutual fund, to me, it wasn't enough to say, I know what a mutual fund is. I wanted to know, and I wanted my clients to know that I knew what their key differentiators were, what the market for this type of product was, who would be distributing the product, what the regulatory environment was. All of these types of things mattered to me before I could even start building a compelling narrative around the product. And I believe I haven't found another marketing firm that's invested in 2 Bloomberg terminals and analysts in-house. So we could do the more micro level research, and then look at the macro level. What competitors are out there? What similar products? What is their messaging? What is their brand? So that we weren't just building something, we were building something that cut through the clutter, so to speak. And we all say we do that. But to me, it had to start with a very, very, very deep industry knowledge, a knowledge of the product, knowledge of the team that was going to be managing the product, a knowledge of why they were launching this product, what the opportunity set was from the product, what would resonate with clients or IAs or RIAs who are going to be selling this product to their clients, what part of a shelf it may have occupied. All of those types of things were really, really important to me. So we start with that deep product knowledge, and again, it doesn't have to just be brand. It could be, what's the thought leadership around it. If you're launching an ESG product, what's the what are people saying in this space about that type of ESG product? How can we create some materials that look different, read differently, build a narrative? My wife says to our kids, start with a beginning, middle, and end. Like, build a really compelling narrative, then start looking at what the brand is around it. And I always say, look at what the client likes. Like, the client is aware of what their competitive environment looks like. So to me, it's, if they say they want iconography versus imagery, if they want a logo that uses X font or colors versus that, all of those superficial, so to speak, elements, but that become part of the overall brand and messaging. To me, I want their product to reflect what they envision, but also married with what will be different from what's out there, what will look different, feel different, again, to give them that key differentiator. But overall, I always say the client has preferences. You have to sell the client first before they can see you, and they can sell the product to their distribution channels and ultimately retail investors and other types of clients. So to me, it's what do they like? How are you building from that? What is their story? And there's always some interesting. So like as we've helped launch or relaunch or launch existing products into different geographic locations or other demographics 1,000 times, and there's always those key differentiators. There's always interesting ways to position the product, to build a brand around the product and the story and the history, the philosophy, all of those types of things. That's what I do. When you ask me to be, short-winded about my passions, that's my passion. And to be, to not say, take up 20 minutes talking about it is an exercise in restraint for me. So that's a longer-winded answer.
Look, I love your passion shines through, man, and I love to hear it. Let me ask you this, and I'm putting you on the spot with a question. So the answer may be no, but have you ever lost a client, right, to maybe just to another agency, to another, and have them come back to you again and say, you know what, these guys, they don't understand what we do. Has anything such as that come about?
It happened very recently, actually. But one of the more interesting exercises was we had a client that was a large asset manager that had gone to a big brand agency, and we get it. They're really the experts in creating these logo treatments and the architecture and all of these things. So we got it. They built a very cool brand for the client. I think we could have done a good job for them as well. What happened was after that, it was taking that brand and rolling it out through all their materials, all their brochureware and their web presence and their e-blast and their decks and all of that kind of stuff. They wanted the new messaging and the new brand architecture to be rolled out, and they started working with that large agency. And the agency just could not, for a basic brochure, couldn't write the thing and lay it out with the proper tables and graphs and sources and all of those types of things properly, because again, they understood how to build a big brand. They did not understand how to roll out a brand to people who need that deep level of knowledge. So the client came back to us and said, will you update? And we had to do a full diagnostic on all of their materials. It was a massive it wasn't multi-year, but it was almost a full year of going through all these, because they had been around and we find this a lot that, 5 different salespeople will create 5 different decks and pick and choose and then update it with their own wording. So it becomes very diverse, but not usually perfectly on brand and certainly not always compliant. So we had to go through all of that and say, okay, well, you have 3 decks that say essentially the same thing. Can we merge them with the new brand and the new messaging? Save them a lot of time and effort later on, and help build into that brand that they wanted to establish so badly.
Well, I love the slug that you offered me, and I loved your expansion of it in terms of how you guys work through this. I got to tell you that for me, for all my years in this industry, that is one of the major things that keeps coming up is the expertise that a particular agency has. You can walk the walk. Excuse me, you can talk the talk, but who's really there to walk the walk? And I really thank you for bringing this up and for expanding on it as you have. I'll move on now, if I may. I'm gonna point to you now, Mushter. Now, the slug that I've written down, you can alter it in any way if you'd like. But building a bridge between strategy or execution and strategy, or strategy and execution. Sorry. And maybe why don't you expand on that, if you would, and
Sure.
offer any color that you'd like to through you and your talented team at TrueVoice have embarked upon.
So, let me illustrate it with actually a real experience that we're having right now. One of our clients, it's a Fortune 50 client in the financial services space. We are helping them through exactly this, sort of they came back. Let me back up and say that we've been as with many of our clients, we've been with them for close to 10 years. So we have a very long track record. We have the opportunity as somebody coming in from the inside to look at points of fracture and friction within the organization in many different ways, right? So we bring that perspective in terms of as I talked about, we have a proprietary framework and a lens that we put where we allow our customer to take a look at things much more holistically. So this particular client was looking at, again, doing a much better job of strategy, but connecting at the ground level. They had a certain criteria that they had set up. They said that in order to get funding, and it's all at the end of the day, as you know, with large organizations, connects to whether you can get the money, that you need to do the things that you need to do. And their criteria, there's 6 criteria, operate with discipline, elevate analytical rigor, differentiate the company in the market, become a learning organization, champion digital first, establish mature segmentation. And if you look at all of those things, they're extremely aspirational statements. How does that connect to the ground level, right? So we have 2 pieces of the puzzle that we bring to the table, as I said, our framework, which is looking at every marketing problem through what we call our 5 keys. Understanding sort of the audience piece first. Do you know your customer, but not only know, but you know how to own them, right, over the course of the life cycle of the customer. The second is really focused on people part of the equation. Are you aligned? Because marketing does not do anything sort of on a solo basis. They have to work with sales, technology, and whatnot to bring together. The next fact that we look at is, how do you measure success? Is there a common vocabulary that you use to connect everybody else? And then on the ground, test and learn, which is an important part of our philosophy and framework that we apply to say everything that you're doing should be as part of your capacity and capability building exercise across the board. And the last but not least is sort of change management. I think that's the weakest link. That's sort of what wraps everything around. Now, how do we bring that to the table is partly a function of how do we apply technology to that problem. And this is where we believe that generative AI and the large language models have provides a way to bring signal from knowledge. These large organizations, they create presentations, they have conversations going on all across the board. The power is bringing them together and connecting the dots, enabling them by simple things as leveraging the taxonomy capability of generative AI to create a common language for them to speak to. Bring all of the strategy together in a much more coherent way that they can look at, so that when they are problem solving, they know where each problem sits, if you will, right? So that's sort of how we think about helping our client from looking at bringing a coherent strategy together. But now the connecting of the strategy to execution is we then apply these to downstream activities, right? Part of the application is that once we bring the knowledge base together, it almost becomes your strategic consciousness always being there in the system, that we can then both roadmap out for things that ought to be done that's very well connected to the strategy, but we can also look at the results and look back and say, is it really achieving the strategic outcome that you had actually outlined, right? Our client has OKRs that are spelled out fairly clearly, but the OKRs cannot simply be the end in itself. It's a means to an end. And how do you connect them? And through technology, we really enable that granular level sort of connection downstream as well. So I'll pause it here. So that's sort of the way we look at the bridge between our framework and then applying technology to the problem.
What a great explanation, and thank you for blowing that out for us. Let me ask you, as it relates to strategy, in most circumstances, do the clients come to you saying, this is what we want to do now? How do we connect that between strategy and execution? Or are you guys involved with setting the strategy in most cases as well? Or is it a mixed bag?
So this particular initiative started with really a conversation on attribution. And they were talking about, how do we sort of figure out, an attribution model that really looks at the marketing spend that we make and is realistically able to sort of point out the successes that we had. And as you peel back the onion on the attribution question, you actually have to resolve a lot of multiple different issues. So what we do is help them reframe the question that they're asking to a large extent, right? And that's sort of part of what our methodology does for them, is saying that, are you asking the right sort of questions to solve the problem that you need to solve? And that's sort of the translation. So we are in that sense a translator of their strategy. So when they have their strategy, they actually know, they have a lot of experience with their own businesses and whatnot. What we are again providing is the ability to take blinders off, provide a better translation for the things that they're talking about, and again, connect the dots across multiple groups, whether it's sales and marketing or technology and marketing as well.
Yeah, Mosher, thank you so much for expanding on that, on your connection of strategy to execution passion. It was terrific to hear what you had to say. Before I move on, I have not been a very good moderator because I have not instructed the audience that you all may chime in with a question. Obviously, you have to type it in with a question if you would like to by using the chat toggle down below. Right? No, the Q&A toggle down below. So please don't hesitate to do that if you'd like to. Let me move on to you now, Gordon, if I may, Gordon Kerr. Would you share, expand a little bit on what you've identified as your passion about reaching an equilibrium between AI and talent? And could you expand on that a bit, please?
Sure. I was really struck recently by the Gartner CMO report that said that CMOs, only 24% of them say they have a budget sufficient enough to execute the strategy. And at the same time, the amount of budget allocated to human capital, agencies, so creative, buying, strategy, et cetera, has reduced. Yet the amount of the responsibility of marketing to drive business growth and specific outcomes has increased. So the role of media has to work harder. The role of marketing has to attribute itself to business growth. And yet the investment in the supporting mechanics to do that has reduced. And so there are a bunch of ways to solve for that, but definitely efficiency is one of those. And the ability to invest in tools that can drive efficiency, can synthesize data more effectively, can shorten the cycle between signal to in-market activity, can drive connection between marketing-driven sales outcomes, ensuring that we employ a more talented, differentiated workforce that can provide added value to our clients, acting as a genuine partner, not just a vendor to our clients. I haven't yet to meet an investment management marketing team that is over-resourced. So we have to make sure that we provide that resource that they cannot invest in themselves. And to everything that everybody's already spoken about on the call, we need to bring in expertise. We need to understand the role of alternative investments in an RIA's portfolio. We have to understand how to educate and enlighten these audiences. We have to ensure that we drive message retention thinking, that we're not spending all this money just to reach audiences. We get them onto site and then the experience is poor. The AI has a billion permutations and opportunities to drive those efficiencies and those effective outcomes. And I'm sure we all do, we sit in meetings and we have to figure out what the effectiveness of what we did. And I believe that AI and the synthesizing of the data is a smart route to achieving some of those outcomes. Now, one thing I would have said if I had two things to talk about earlier is the role of partnerships with a media owner. So I'm a custodian of a budget and we're an intermediary in the process, and we focus very much on efficiencies and we focus on data and reporting and a lot of things. But being a genuine partner with both the brand that we represent and the media owner is critical in this. So that ensures that we share information. There are no surprises. We give everybody the opportunity to succeed the way we would request the opportunity to succeed with the client. And AI and data and partnerships and bringing in talent into the agency is a critical route to driving success longer term. And I, like many of us, passionately believe that brand-driven sales growth is what's going to ensure that you exist in 10 years' time and that you don't fall foul of consolidation, which is likely to happen in our industry significantly. So again, just to sum there, the partnership with the media owner is a critical component. The talent we bring in, the use of AI to drive efficiencies and effectiveness is, I think, how we justify ourselves and we help our partners justify the media spend or the investment in their brand to deliver business growth.
Gordon, what a great explanation, and thank you for that. Let me ask you a question, and it's okay to say, Bill, I don't agree, but I'm going to throw this out to you. It seems to me that agencies for the longest time had been, yes, entirely concerned with effectiveness, but not quite having their handle on the notion of efficiency, of doing it on the for as reasonably as you can. Do you agree that efficiency might be a much more important metric as we move forward in our industry, or am I reading too much into this?
It may be the inverse. It may be that actually people are focused on efficiency and lack of investment in things like talent. In the digital marketing landscape, we've seen the whole MFA issue. We've seen challenges with things like, I don't want to name companies, poor ad tech partners that are just doing millions and billions of impressions to make sure we like hopefully meet the right audience. I think it's the other way. It's like the effectiveness is what we want to talk about. What did we deliver? What did we achieve? What needle did we move? And how did we do that effectively? That we take the asset management's efficiency frontier model for planning. So we plan efficiently, but people care about effectiveness. It may cost more to reach the correct audience in the correct environment at the correct time, but that's worth more than it would be to buy that audience cheaper at the wrong time in the wrong environment. So I could go on about that all day, but I think the effectiveness is the piece that people really want to know. And it's getting more complex. And AI and data can assist in that, but the complexity of what we have to achieve as marketers and as agencies and for sales outcomes is not going to get easier. It's going to get much more complex.
Gordon, thank you so much, and thank you for clarifying that for me and for our audience. I appreciate your comments and your explanation of your bullet point. Doug Hesney, I'm moving on to you, Doug from Cognito. The bullet point that you were able to add into our conversation was influencing the right audiences. And needless to say, that's so important in financial, but I'm going to ask you to please drill down and tell us a little bit more about what you mean or meant, and any examples that might come to mind.
Sure. I mean, I think that, our client base is pretty broad based. So we have everything from, B2B, service providers where people are looking to, work with the company to finance, say, a solar array in a mid-market, in a mid-market region of the United States, and they are able to get financialization and industrialization as a service. So we have clients that are that industrial, that B2B, all the way up to clients that are doing, broad-based investment consultancies for pension funds, for Fortune 500 companies on a global basis, right? So, and asset managers and everything in between. So we really have to think a lot about where is news coverage, because we are, in part a PR agency and people really care about media, but also because we do a lot of work in digital marketing and digital advertising as to what audiences, what outlets, where can you go on a platform where you're really going to get ROI, or if you're going to try and reach an audience, do you need to go after a broad-based audience for your message, or is there something much more targeted and niche that you want to go after? And looking at it from an audience first perspective, and then saying, and we very much do this on behalf of our clients, where we can come in and evaluate a situation and say, these are the audiences you want to reach. These are the different strategies you can employ to get there. These are the messages we think we're going to resonate, and then work through that on a process where we're A/B testing it, working it through in the field. What I find so fascinating, and I tell this story to my team all the time, is that when I first started, this goes back longer than I care to admit, I was told by a client that, the media coverage that we got them in the Wall Street Journal online wasn't any good because it wasn't in the print edition, right? Nobody reads the online edition of the Wall Street Journal. People only read the print edition. That's all that matters. And I remember having this conversation, well, you can share this, you can put it online, you can put it in an email, doesn't matter. That's not where my audience is. And I think about that all the time because obviously my client was wrong. And I don't want to be that person, right? Like I don't want our team to be the people who are looking at different and new channels of audiences and saying they don't matter, even though they very clearly do. One of the things that I'm so struck by in terms of overall marketing, and I think that this is something that is really germane for everybody that's on the call, is to a certain extent, there is very much an opportunity because of the way the economics of media is broadening out for brands to do things like global advertising campaigns where they may not have been able to do that 10, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago. The ability to speak unfiltered to influencers, or to have your own YouTube channel, or to, in terms of thinking about where audiences are, it's remarkable. Some of the things that I think about all the time is like CNBC they're thrilled if they get 300,000 people to watch their afternoon program. They are. You talk to the producers, you know what the ratings are. That's what it is. You can go on a YouTube channel and you can see that a video will get 300, 400,000 views, you know, and their subscribers are somewhere 800, 900,000. And I will tell you, our industry doesn't pay attention to that at all. Like, you ask me like what people don't pay attention to, that is what we do not pay attention to, right? The rise of Substack on the print side, I think, is a really critical thing. I just put out a piece, I'll do a little plug, on community banking and best ways to communicate with community banking. And if you're not familiar with, you know, the community banking sector and how it's worked with fintechs in the United States, there have been a lot of fintech companies that went to the regional banks in the United States. You worked with them for broker deposits, so you would use the Cash App or Venmo, whatever. But really, you were banking with some bank in Oklahoma or Arkansas or what have you. The number one reporter who writes about these issues, and they are vast, there's been bankruptcies and people who've lost their money and all of this, I won't go into it, is the Substacker. His name is Jason McCullough. He used to be a banker. And I interact with him on a regular basis. And I will tell you that asking him for a correction is not like asking for a correction from the Wall Street Journal. It's a very different world. He's a subscriber-based guy. It's one guy, you know, and he has his own audience, but his audience matters. His 20,000 subscribers are the people in the fintech and banking world that really matter to who our clients are and to who people that want to be in the industry. One other point on this that I would say is that in terms of viewership and where things are going, if you look at some of the deals that are being struck, I mean, in Paramount right now is like a great one. CBS, that's CBS News, right? Paramount, who knows who's going to own them in 3 months? It might be Edgar Bronfman, it might be Shari might keep them, you know, it might be, you know, the Oracle guy's son. But the economics of this industry is very much in flux. And when you look at what the media companies are saying, right? When you look at how they're saying they are going to monetize, I mean, they're going back to the 1950s, right? They are saying, we're going to be one platform. We're going to have like, there's going to be like 5 networks, and we're going to make money on advertising. And if you want to come and you want to reach the, you know, suburban housewives, you can watch these shows on Netflix and these shows on Disney and this and that. But the difference is that unlike 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, the supply of advertising is limitless, right? So when we come into this as Cognito from a global basis and we work with our global clients, you know, we're starting to look at things along the lines of, you know, can we go to a Disney? Can we go to a Netflix? Can we go to a YouTube and say, we want to buy a global ad campaign and we want these audiences and we want it on these shows, and be able to do that for a smaller or mid-market company just because the supply of advertising is so much greater than it used to be. And if you read into what they're saying in their economic reports and you read into what they're saying, they're going to lower the price on this. They have more capacity than they have to sell. It's just simple supply and demand, right? So these are the things when I think about financial marketing and we think about best practices and where they're going, you know, I don't know what the best practices are for this. Does anybody on the call know what the best practices are for this? I don't know. We're in a new world. And I find that, you know, extremely exciting, you know? So I think that to a certain extent, you know, this is an old school hero. I have an old school hero in communications who's David Sarnoff, right? If you don't know, David Sarnoff founded NBC. He founded RCA back in the day. He invented radio and television, you know, really. And it's an interesting guy. But what David Sarnoff understood, you know, very early on, is that if you want to build audiences, you have to give people something compelling to drive to. And he was very early on live sports. He was very early on, you know, building variety shows and spectacles and things that were going to get people to tune in. And I think that we're in a very similar circumstance right now. You know, if you want to be able to reach an audience, you have to go where they are tuning in. And it is not cable news. It's not the old school newspapers. It's not linear TV. And finding and interacting with these new forms, that to me, I think is the fundamental challenge right now.
Doug, when you embark upon a new relationship with a client, or if you're about to embark upon a new relationship with a client, does it often begin with maybe correcting some misconceptions about what they might have about who these audiences are that they are trying to influence, or is it not so dramatic as that?
You know, I think a lot of companies have a good sense of who their audiences are in general, right? I think, I always find that whenever I'm working with a new client or if I'm working with a new industry, they're always going to know their internal business and their client base better than I will, right? It's who they are, it's what their business is. I think what we can do a sense of is give them a sense of market, right? What is the market? What is the audience market for these services, right? When you are saying you want to go out and influence these kinds of audiences, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And this is the one thing that I think I've really learned from financial services and working in financial services is that nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything must be benchmarked to somebody, and there must be some kind of relative basis in terms of what you're doing. So I think if a client comes to you and they say, I want this audience and I want to be in these publications and I want to be in it for these reasons, I think the first thing that you have to do for a client is say, okay, and we get that and get a sense of it, but then also give them a sense of what the market for those ideas are and who's contributing to it and who's not, and see where you can zig and where you can zag. And I think it's less so about busting misconceptions because misconceptions get busted as you're doing this, but more so going through an analytical process of identifying really where your audiences are and where they're not. And I think when you go through that, maybe you've learned some things that you hadn't learned before, and you found some things out that you hadn't found out before. But I think that's very much something that needs to be done at a foundational level because things are changing so quickly right now. So it's definitely a conversation that we have right at the outset. And then I would say it's one that we return to quarterly so that that we're not losing sight of it.
Doug, thank you so much for your excellent contribution to this passionate panel. Much appreciated. Doug Gallo from 50,000 Feet. I'm gonna move on to you. What you are passionate about, you and your colleagues, is brand building. And could you expand on this a little bit? Maybe offer some color, some examples.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, great commentary from the whole crew here today, just that resonates so much with me, especially what you were saying about really deep customer understanding is so foundational to brand building as well. So love building on everything everyone's saying. I think for me, as I've been thinking a lot about brand building recently in our approach, and when it comes to financial services, especially, it's we talk sometimes about building enduring brands or durable brands that can really navigate waves of change. And it's something that's so important right now, thinking about the certain types of macro forces that are driving change in financial services and what marketers need to deal with. From a foundational level, brand building always needs to embrace what's true and authentic to organizations, what's relevant to customers today and tomorrow, and what will ultimately drive unique points of difference for a company and for a brand. And thinking about financial services in particular, having worked with lots of brands across this space, so many brands must require a certain degree of gravitas and foundational trust in financial services. It's kind of part and parcel to the type of work that these businesses do. And oftentimes it's seen as that trust and responsibility and transparency and certain themes are often so core to the needs of the customers that these businesses serve. So then really the core questions and answers lie for building brands around how to create systems that can enable a degree of bold and authentic distinction for these companies, that can help them differentiate themselves to break through across pretty complex multi-stakeholder audiences a lot of the time. And so for me and for folks at our firm, really strong customer understanding is so foundational. And I think everyone's hit on a lot of themes here, similar themes here of just the total importance of that. And I think I think also building on what Richard said of true deep business understanding as well, of the products and services of clients, and the perception of value of those to customers is so important. And true understanding of their value, not just what's been perceived by that business over time, but doing the research and having the in-depth conversations with these customers to understand where value is truly derived from what a financial services company is providing them. And I think all of those factors considered and that deeper levels of research and understanding of data about about customers and customer behavior can lead to some identifying some of those unique points of difference and where to lean in, how to build systems that can functionally and emotionally connect with customers. But getting back to my initial passion point isn't just brand building, but brand building that can navigate these forces of change. I think there's really interesting macro forces that affect financial services companies all the time. I mean, the markets themselves is a constant force of change that needs to be, brands need to be set up to systematically react to in their behaviors of how they serve customers. Obviously the past several years have painted a totally new picture of what volatility can look like for how businesses need to respond. And so brand actually plays a big role in kind of informing the behavior and communication style and actions that businesses take to evolve and react to that volatility. I think consumer behavior across generations is fascinating when it comes to financial services. And obviously this is a huge and varied industry with lots of different stakeholders from institutional down to the retail environments. But I think consumer behavior can have such a monumental effect and will continue to do so, obviously, with its part and parcel connection to markets and how that financial services companies can serve a group of customers. I'm actually kind of a bit of a fan, disciple of Scott Galloway, and for anyone else, really kind of his tirade currently on the wealth gap generationally in America and how so much wealth is being built and sustained by older generations right now, and the dramatic difference in the way that younger generations are experiencing and building wealth, and how that affects overall lifestyle, how that affects their financial decisions. Understanding just those distinct segments for marketers is incredibly important and interesting right now in financial services, and thinking about brand building for a brand that might need to serve multiple generations, while trying to serve a new generation while trying not to alienate new ones. Just another kind of fascinating point that goes into companies when thinking about how to build a brand. Other tensions and forces of change right now that I think are fascinating that's related to that is navigating the expectations of technology versus human interaction between customers and financial services companies. It's in some ways it's an industry that's been dealing with that for years, because there's always such an importance of data and human interaction that's part and parcel to so many types of financial organizations. But as really down to consumer behavior, as it shifts, it affects even more at a B2B level some of those expectations, and designing brands that can be empowered to serve their customers in those ways in an omni-channel perspective is so interesting, and will continue to shift, of course, as technology changes, as AI advances to take over certain responsibilities. It will all need to be considered, and all requires solid brand strategies and foundations that empower marketers to go to market in unique, differentiated ways that can build value for their customers. So those are a bit of the just key passion points for me as I think about brand in this industry right now.
Fascinating discussion points, and I really thank you for bringing these to light as it relates to brand building in financial services marketing. I have one final question, and I'm afraid, just given the clock, it's going to have to be a brief one, but it's for you, Doug Gallo. I wanted to ask you about I totally understand how a brand needs to be relevant to the audiences that you're looking to influence and cater to, but talk to me about the culture of the financial organization and how that impacts what your brand needs to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I always say great brands are built from the inside out. There are the underlying personality and behaviors that are driven by brand strategy is so important. And when there's a proper fusion of the culture of organization and how it serves its customers, That's where truly strong brands are created and really outperform in the market. And so I think it's a really interesting time in financial services where you're seeing certain organizations take important steps to build strong culture. And a lot of that is built on, of course, very dependent on industry, specific subsector of industry and the type of service that a firm provides. But in a nutshell, I think we're seeing a moment in time where culture and employee experience is under such a more of a microscope than it probably ever has been. And the more that firms can do to embed a little bit of broader purpose into the employee experience, into the types of efforts that it makes for the communities in which it serves, and empowers employees to do great work and be a great workplace, is more important than ever. And often that manifests directly into both externally as well in the behaviors of that company and how it's perceived more broadly. So very intrinsically linked, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Excellent. Doug, listen, thank you so much for that full-on discussion on brand building and financial. Now, listen, I promised this panel, this is going to fly. This is going to fly by, and it has, because it was such an enjoyable conversation that I had with all of you. I want to give one nod of thanks to all of our panelists. Richard Heft from EXT Marketing, Muster Moyne from TrueVoice Growth Marketing, Gordon Kerr from Fundamental Media, and Doug Hesney from Cognito, not to mention, last but not least, Doug Gallo from 50,000 Feet. You guys were terrific panelists to have, as we did our very best to talk all about the best practices in financial services marketing. And I thank you for bringing all these wonderful points to light.